Hi, this is a synastry reading. We are looking at two individuals' charts combined to see how each person is mentioned and viewed through the eyes of the other person, vice versa, and to look at some strengths and potential challenges that these two in a union would face. There are also things to suggest the longevity or duration of the relationship. To understand the two individual people first, it's best to address each person's big three and then look at how those work with each other's. The big three, of course, is the ascendant, the sun, and the moon sign. When we look at each person's three, it's a good way to get an idea for who this person, mostly in their available consciousness, acts and the energy that is directed out of them and how they interpret energy coming in. This will show a lot about compatibility, especially the sun and the moon, how they play the deeper relationships in our lives. So we'll start with Jane here. Um, the the inner ring is Jane, and their whole chart is based off of your rising sign, which is Gemini. So a person with a Gemini rising is someone who needs a lot of variety and intellectual stimulation in their everyday life. They're somebody that, whether or not you're extroverted, isn't really the issue here. It is looking at somebody who just needs connections with others in some way. So some people take this as being extroverted, but that's not necessarily true. It's just somebody who is hungry for learning other people's experiences and other people's perspectives on things. So you might run into a lot of people with from different walks of life from you, and that might be very interesting. You attract this kind of energy in your life. You are the lifetime student that wants to get as many different perspectives as possible. And no matter what you accomplish academically, what kind of accolades you show, you're always going to be hungry to learn more from people, places, things, anything you can that interests you. You're going to want to experience it and gain some data on your way. Someone like this might meet many people in life, or might let their mind experience many things through book studies or um, just through through the internet searches and things like that. But it's an active mind, this placement, with the need to connect to people on some level. The sun sign in Pisces is going to add another dose of this mutable energy, this need for variety, this changeability. The strength here is to being able to adapt to new situations pretty easily. You might have this personal philosophy of going with the flow in life as much as you're able to. Um, you tend to give off this compassionate energy, which can be very attractive to others. It can be a reason that people are drawn to you romantically. Also, that this compassion is not always a bleeding heart. Sometimes it's just an understanding that we all have passed, we all have done things that brought us here. Nobody's perfect. You are more likely to just accept people for who they are. They don't feel like they have to pretend around you. And you're just somebody that you're not really asking at face value anyway, between your ascendant and your sun sign. I think when someone's first dating you, they have this more like easy vibe that like you're not expecting long-term commitment. You're understanding that people come in and out of lives. That's just the nature of life. And you can be just very wise about those types of things and not dig your claws into somebody. It can be very attractive to people who, you know, aren't sure what they're doing tomorrow or what they're looking for long term. I say at face value because then we move on to your third sign, your moon sign, which is in Scorpio. And in that situation, it has a little bit more of a depth to it as far as looking longer term and trying to remain committed to somebody, looking to people who understand that it does matter to you, that they know where they're going tomorrow, or that they at least have a potential for a future. The Scorpio moon is a fixed sign and it's going to want some type of knowing that it can plan things in the future. That is not just something that is a good time, that there's some level of commitment here. And it's going to need some type of proof of that. It's going to not feel stable and secure until it has some type of proof of that commitment. And it's going to take a little bit of energy from another person to make you feel secure. So when you combine all three of those things, you have somebody that's very open and accepting of new people of all different walks of life, who makes people feel comfortable in who they are already, and they don't need to put on a show for you. But then for somebody that long term is what you're looking for, and sometimes it's not even to your understanding right away, but there is this level of, I am looking for somebody who I can have this great intimacy, this intimate connection with, and that is important. And that is something that comes out maybe a little bit later when you feel comfortable to really let someone know that side of you. But there's a possessiveness there, and that, um, and possessive can seem like uh unevolved situation, and it doesn't have to be a negative context. Possessive can mean, it seems like ownership or things like that, but it's a understanding that there's this loyalty there. Like you are deep down looking for someone who's loyal, and you can kind of call yours in not a codependent way, but in a mutually receptive, understanding way. There's something special and sacred about this bond, is what you're looking for. So now going to Tyler's big three, we're seeing that right away you're starting off on different sides here. And for him having a Sagittarius rising, it means that his whole perspective then is going to be the 180 of yours. But what's interesting is that in synastry, we say opposites attract. So he falls into the seventh house of this relationship. And that is exactly who you would say is the kind of person that would walk into your life, because you have this opposite side of the magnet pulling you together, because everything in your conscious ability is lacking what he can bring, and everything that he has is lacking what you can bring. Together, you bridge this gap of the knowledge access. So the Gemini brings everyday knowledge and awareness, understanding that every day is an opportunity to learn something new and to remain curious throughout life, never thinking that you have become the master of anything. You're always willing to learn and be excited by something new. And the Sagittarius, right, or rising, who is then on the descendant of you, comes in with this confidence and this optimism of this greater, bigger picture that helps lift you up to an awareness that you weren't considering, And now there's this whole new world for you to contemplate. And the Sagittarius is amazed again with this childlike wonder of the world that he's already living in. And he's kind of brought back down to reality a little bit by you, and is again excited about every day, and does he kind of comes off of this self-righteous knowing and back down into, oh, there is still more to uncover. I am not the wise one that I thought I was. And there is still more to be amazed at, even on this day-to-day realm, not even looking at the big picture of life. But see how you come together here. He gets you thinking about, why are we all here? And you get him thinking about, oh wow, look at this. I haven't seen this in real life. On this flower is beautiful on my walk today. My drive to work, I saw a whole new perspective, a whole new route to take that blew my mind. You need each other to keep things interesting in both levels and keep being amazed by life. And the way you can do that for each other really keeps both of the energy young and spirited and adventurous. And that's something that both of these signs on this axis really appreciate. They never want to be dulled and bored. They always want to be excited, ambitious, alive. Um, so I think that would be a very plus for both of you right off the bat here. Moving on to his sun. He has the sun in Leo. So he now has the rising and the sun in fire sign. So when you have both of that, you think, okay, this person can be very lively. You know, fire is fire because it sets other things on fire. These people are very inspiring, um, charismatic, and their energy is just contagious. When they're really being the best versions of themselves, they tend to create a crowd. People want to feel as alive as they do. And they have this energy like, we're about to go do something. Like, you know, I'm really in the driver's seat of my life. And for a mutable sign like yourself with your mutable sun and rising, I think you're the type of person that would really catch their fire. You're ready to see what other people are doing, and you want to go with that energy. So this Leo sun is somebody who can be very convincing of his ideas. He may be a great leadership role. There's a lot of pride in the Leo, and they need to hear it from others, especially their partners, what they're doing right, because they're always trying to find the courage to be their authentic self. And when they are able to really show their true talents and be who they really are, that takes a lot of bravery for them, and they can become a little self-conscious about it, even if they have the most confident face. They're still always, the pride is always still asking them, like, did they get that joke? Do they like me? Was I good enough? So it's always the partner of the Leo who is there to say, yes, I get your joke. I think you're great. You can never be over complimentary to a Leo. You you can be insincere though, and they'll notice that, and that's not ever going to be effective in anything. But the point would be that with your energy of the compassionate and intuitive, just very, you can feel the energy and almost know intuitively what somebody needs. So I think this is a good match. You know, you wouldn't always say um, traditionally that Pisces and Leo are always, you know, best matched. But when you look at it for sign, and you see the energy here, this fire person really could use the support of a water Piscean mutable energy to give that little validation lift that they could use to keep the fire going and feel good about themselves. The the fixed energy in the sun sign just means that there could be a little, stubbornness or reluctancy for change. But I think the fire and the mutable energy of the rising sign, I think that helps there. And they're both agreeable fire elements. So this is someone who, when you first meet, he's probably pretty close to similar to once you get to know him too. He probably has this um this you see what you get kind of personality, which is great when you're trying to get to know someone and you don't want to think that they're hiding anything from you, especially a Scorpio moon wants to know what they're getting into. So then we move on to his Aquarius moon, and now we see the the change here. So we have an opposition in his own chart from his ego to his subconscious energy. So when he is really closest to the people, as close as he can be. So the moon is related to the mother because that's usually our first most intimate relationship. But as we grow and change in life, who becomes our most intimate person is our partner, our lover, our spouse. These are the people then that become the most intimately connected to us. So now he has the opposing energy here that what you see is what you get. First meet me, get to know me. But then there's that emotional side of him deep down is this Aquarian energy. So I feel like there's this dig your heels in the ground energy, two fixed sides going on here, but in different directions. There's an intellectual Aquarian, and then there's a passionate, emotionally charged sun. So I think when you are really trying to get close to someone like that, you want to be able to relate on the same wavelength. And this is an intellectual, um, this is well-spoken energy. This is someone who needs communication. Sometimes with the Aquarius moon and the Scorpio moon, the challenge here is that Scorpio can kind of shut down when they feel hurt or threatened. They're more likely to just shut it all the way down so they don't have to be really hurt or misunderstood. And then Aquarius always thinks they're being misunderstood. As the sign of Aquarius, they're the ones who get kicked out of the group because that they are too eccentric. They're forever the black sheep of the group. So you have two energies that already feel like that. Sometimes it's hard for them to come together and really talk things through, especially in the sign of the moon where they're maybe emotionally vulnerable. So I can see this being a issue here. Who's going to be the one to have the olive branch out? Well, Aquarius is still an air sign. Air signs always need some level of communication. The air quality in itself is about relating to others. So they're going to have to communicate. You just have sometimes this Leo ego pride block and this Aquarian moon who thinks he's misunderstood block. So the key here then would be to really lean on the Piscean sun energy of the healer, the one who is willing to put their neck out on the line sometimes just for the sake of getting this collective feeling back. And there's not a lot of ego going on in the Pisces sun. That is the sign really of undoing of the self. So as long as the Piscean person isn't overly becoming this martyr position, because that can happen, or they're not always, it's not always them doing it. I think that energy could really help the situation. I think when we move to the Venus signs, we'll see here too that you having the Aquarius Venus is really a huge strength here, because it gives this ability to speak what you need to say, even if it's going to hurt someone's feelings, but you're going to say it. And you need to express yourself. There's the birthright of the Aquarius to express itself, even if that means they're going to get kicked out, or that means someone's going to leave them, or they get fired. It doesn't matter. Aquarius has to express themselves, and they're going to do it no matter what. Where Leo is on the other side of that. They need to express themselves, but they're so painfully aware of what other people think of them that sometimes when this light that they want to shine, when they don't feel like it's going to be accepted, they will hesitate, to hold back. Where Aquarius says, I know all of you guys are doing this, but I need to do something else. I still want to be part of this group. It's important to me, but I'm not going to hide who I am. And I think that is a strength here for you guys to talk the same language in that aspect of the relationship. But where it comes to your both emotional vulnerability of the moons, you're both in fixed signs, and you're both, the Scorpio moon kind of shuts down and the Aquarius moon already feels misunderstood. So that could be a challenge right there. When you're looking at the synastry chart, we really cross them over though. So we take the sun and the moon of each person, because if their emotional nature can be reflected by the ego and public persona of the other person, or it's compatible, then that's when it's helpful, because it makes the other person even subconsciously feel comfortable and understood. So here, I don't really see where we're experiencing that. So if I took your Pisces sun to his Aquarius moon, it's not the same language. It's not an understanding of each other's nature. And if I take the Leo sun to the Scorpio moon, there is sometimes, they're both fixed energies, so they both will understand and respect when people are drawing the line in the sand. But two fixed signs sometimes don't go anywhere, because each one stands their ground so well. So what I think, if I was going to say about each of the big threes as far as strengths, it would be this Pisces sun person making everyone feel safe and comfortable to really express themselves. And I would say it would be these two opposing ascendants that really line up in each other's lives where they need to be. So you get this challenge here of sometimes totally different perspectives, but that's what we need. I mean, you guys both, especially with these two signs on the ascendants, you both want to be challenged and you want things to stay interesting. So I think in this situation, it's more of a strength than a challenge to not have that sun moon compatibility, because your ascendants are saying you want broader perspectives and interesting relationships in your life anyway. So I think overall, when we look at the big threes, I think there's more strengths than challenges here. The biggest challenge as far as the big threes would go, I would say it would be the moon signs both being fixed and maybe trying to hold back emotional vulnerability from each other. So let's move on here. When I look at a synastry chart, I just scan it and I like to see where things fall. And I was really excited to see the ascendant and the descendant fall in each other's. That's positive. And then, looking to the Venus and Mars, there are a lot of aspects going on to Jane's Venus with Tyler's outer, inner, all planets. So when that happens, sometimes when it touches the angles or it touches the sun, it touches, especially on the angles, I like the ascendant. I look to that to see how many things are touching that. But Venus is our planet of love. It's how we find what we're looking for in another person. It's how we express ourselves in love, what we're looking for. It is, the harmony that we can find in relationships, and that is the whole point feel connected to someone. And Venus is in so many aspects here. There's like one, two, I wrote some of these down because I was excited. The planet of attraction is really hit on here a lot. So one, two, three, four, five, six, I think I have written down here. So that's great because at first, I saw a Venus in Aquarius and a Venus in Virgo, and I said, oh goodness, who's going to really be the one who's expressing this attraction, who's really getting the courtship rolling, who's the one? Because both of those sometimes are not seen as the strongest Venus signs, right? But then I see here we have this beautiful conjunction of Aquarius Venus and the Aquarius moon. And when we have those two energies, it's this deep level of being attracted to someone's real emotional nature. And it's about feeling like you want to be fully involved in another person and that you find that attractive. So in the sign of Aquarius, it might be that whatever is unusual about you, or what you're interested in is seen in the deepest part of this other person. So when you feel like he's really being his true emotionally available person, even if that still has a block to it, you see that in yourself and that's attractive to you. Okay, well, I like that in somebody because that's how I am too. I would rather um have like unusual conversations or be a little bit eccentric or obscure in what I like to do or my hobbies, or maybe I just have a lot of spontaneity and I don't like to ask permission for things. I just like to do what I want to do when I want to do it. And that's how this person is deep down too. It's this, oh, I really find that attractive. And I find like I can be safe with this person because I know that they understand that how when I'm in a relationship with somebody, that's how I want to be. And I like that. And look, they get it. So that's a huge strength here to be the same. And Aquarius Venus energy sometimes likes to have this person be friends first. So it wouldn't surprise me if you met through friends or through like an organization or some type of club or group identity. Aquarius is the sign of humanitarian efforts too. So charity or volunteering events. If you didn't meet there, that's something that would be a strength for you two to both reconnect on, and recommit to being attracted to each other. Here, it's the sign of the rebel, but it's always to innovate something. They're group efforts that need to be updated or changed, renewed. You have the eye for what isn't working and how can we make this better. And he does too. And when you take that to that group level or the community level, a charity event, a club, something where there's a group of people, you both might have the same type of thinking or ideas that are very forward thinking and inclusive. And you might realize why you're so attracted to him over again is that he sees that too. He has the same vision. The big picture looks the same. And that's a unique to the Aquarian placements that feel that way. So that's a major strength. The Venus and the Saturn. So if we look right next to the moon, Saturn, in our own natal charts can be sometimes seen as like a malefic planet. But here in the synastry chart, It looks at longevity, how long term are we looking? So when you have Saturn here, a planet of long-term commitments, going slow and steady and winning the race, to have it right here, conjunct your Venus, is a sign of a long-term commitment potential. So the Venus person in this situation is sometimes like romanticized by the other person. So the person that is the Saturn person might want a long-term commitment from somebody of the Venus person who has it like this long-term vision of this idealized perception of this person. So sometimes it can just be like, well, we also need to come to reality with some things of when you have so many Venus aspects here. The person that is the Venus person sometimes just is seen as this object of somebody's love, which is great because you're, you know, it looks like you're in a relationship. So I would say that's appropriate. The only problem is that there could be this disillusionment at some point if the Venus person doesn't always live up to the other person's plan of how the Venus person was supposed to play out all of these roles. So I say that because Saturn is our long-term roles. So it's just you want to make sure that he's seeing you for who you really are. And it's not because he wants somebody to be a long-term partner and you know, you look like from the now or your past or however you present yourself that could be you. That's great, but also make sure that this person realizes that you're like a three-dimensional person and you have many sides of yourself, and there's not something, it's not any kind of particular role that you're going to play. It's that you are a real human being and you might have some flaws, you know, kind of get you off the pedestal a little bit. Like it looks like with all of this person may be very attracted to you and feel like you might be, you know, like the end all be all to what they're looking for. So it's a little bit more pressurized situation. And it's not a negative thing. You know, I like to say, I never say do or don't. I say strengths and challenges. It's in itself, it's a strength that someone could be so enamored by you. But it's the fall down here, the challenge would just be making sure everyone's in touch with reality, that all relationships, all people have flaws, no matter how great and perfect they seem to fit into your plan. They are their own person at the end of the day. With that being said, the potential for a long-term relationship is here with that placement as um, as whether or not that's a strength or challenge to who's listening to this. I don't know what either of you are looking for, but the potential is there that this could be a long-term situation. And in the ninth house, it would be, you know, it's not in a true aspect really to the midheaven here, but it's in the ninth house. So it would be like higher potentials for this union, you know, together. Do you grow in your philosophies? Do you travel the world? Do you take on a spiritual endeavor together? It looks like there's some type of higher expansion of some world going on in this long-term union. So it could be, you know, physical expansion of traveling the world, or it could be spiritual expansion of getting deeper into a religious group. It could be educational expansion of learning, education wise, going to school, becoming professors of something together, or just a lifelong commitment to both stimulating each other and pushing each other to do higher pursuits. And that wouldn't surprise me either with the Gemini Sagittarius energy coming into this. This is the Sagittarius house. So that would make sense that there would be this lifelong continual efforts to keep each other improving and growing and never really stop learning in whatever area that is. So moving on, then let's move to the next little Venus aspect here is Venus opposing. So we have Jane's Venus opposing Tyler's Sun. So when this happens, you know, any contact with Venus, I feel like isn't always, it's hard to say like real challenges based on that because you're saying in the relationship chart that it's talking about relationship things. So there's already a commitment here for both of you. There's already an established energy exchange between these two people. So when we get into charts like this, it's like, well, it's already a strength that it's even happening. You've already affected each other so well versus looking at some other charts and there's zero things going on with Venus and you're like, oh well, where's the actual like relationship pulse here? I feel the pulse is strong in this relationship. So that being said, you're going to get strengths and challenges with that, but it's alive. So I think that's worth being said. But the sun here opposing the Venus, sometimes it can just make the Venus person feel like the sun person is kind of this overbearing energy. And I laugh because I know many Leo suns, and how can they not be like that's who they are, right? They're overbearing energies sometimes. And that's kind of their thing. So if you're already in a relationship with a Leo, you probably already know that. They do. They have a gravitational pull. They're going to pull you in because they think everything revolves around them, and it kind of does sometimes. Um, so the Venus here opposing that is sometimes saying that I'm not always comfortable with that. I need this person to realize like we're equals here. I'm not just the supportive role. I need to be my own sun in my own solar system too. I can't just be orbiting around your drama. And it's sometimes it can be a surprise to the sun person. Like, what do you mean? Like, I thought you liked holding my hand and doing everything for me. Like, you don't love that. And the Venus person's like, how can you be so dense? But like Leos can be dense, they can be, and it's just about kind of owning your own power too. And with your Aquarius Venus energy, I think the obvious answer here is that there's two people that need to make sure that they make space for their own lives. An Aquarius Venus person has to have their own thing going on. You're never going to be uh, happy or satisfied if all of your interests are also their interests. You need to feel like an independent person, and you need to feel like you have something for yourself that is separate from them, because they will light up the room, and that's great, and that's what you love about them. But there needs to be something for you too, because you have a very fiercely independent personality also. That Aquarius Venus person uh really likes to find out what it is that makes them an individual in a group. But you can't just, you're never going to mold into just a partner of someone else. You have your own identity outside of that, and that is Aquarius Venus needs to keep that. That's non-negotiable. So this Leo person just needs to know that too. All right, moving on here, we're going to talk Venus squaring Pluto. All of these are tight orbs. I would say it doesn't always matter, but like all of these Venus are like 3 to 4 degrees. So your Venus is squaring his Pluto. Squares aren't always super harsh in synastry. It's just another contact. So if I have a Venus squaring Pluto in my chart, sometimes I look at that as a little harsher going on in your own natal chart versus a synastry chart, because I sometimes feel like these, challenging or strengthening aspects it's almost always a plus strength anyway because they're talking to each other. They're not independently floating around from each other. They're talking. Even if it's a harsher conversation, that's still a good thing in a relationship. That keeps the pull strong. So here, when I looked at these charts, I said, as soon as I saw those Venus um, aspects going on here, I told myself I knew there would be a Venus Pluto one because you just can't have this kind of intensity on the Venus person without Pluto being in there somewhere. And sure enough, you have a Venus Pluto square. So it just shows again this Leo person, he has these intense feelings for you. And this is a person who feels pretty confident when they make a decision that that's it, this fixed energy between his sun and his moon. Even though he's a Sagittarius rising, and you wouldn't think that they, you know, you hold them down to what they say, but I think he's different. I think when he says something, I think he means it. And when he's got this square to your Venus, it's just a sign to me that he really, he wants to feel so deeply connected to you that it's like this intensity of um, not being casual. This is somebody who really wants that. And it makes your Scorpio moon happy when it's the right person. So you just need to ask yourself, is this the right person? Because this person has this intense hold over you in this relationship or has the ability to and wants that. It's looking to be very loyal. And I hate to say own, but it's like almost that kind of vibe here. It can be very intense. And when it's the square, it can be somebody that when they don't feel that way, they feel like they're threatened by that and they can become suspicious. They can become controlling. They can become overbearing, even. And that is like the not going to work for an Aquarius Venus, but your Scorpio moon might like it. So if you see it here, down here, your moon and his Pluto are in a conjunction here. So there's like this emotional connection, and it can be some type of these power plays between each other where you got to be careful that you're not crossing lines of like using somebody or, becoming abusive in a certain way. And I hate to use that word, but just emotionally, that you're being emotionally respectful of each other because this has the tendency to get really intense and and when it's a strength, when it's a positive, it could be a transformative relationship. It could be deeply healing to that Scorpio moon who at some point has been hurt. But if you look at, this might be worth looking up later on your own too, is the Pluto moon conjunction. Sometimes can be a situation where the Scorpio moon person repeats that again and they let themselves be in a situation where they're being like controlled by someone else and they feel like they emotionally can't separate from their will from the other person and they somehow feel like they wind up owing somebody, or maybe this Pluto person has supported you so you need to do what they want, or you can't be like, it doesn't have to be financially, it can just be emotionally. Maybe they were there for you when no one else was. So now you feel like you owe them to be there for them. It's like these manipulations that can happen. And when it's to your moon, it can be to your detriment because they have the power in this relationship. They have the control over your emotional sensitivities. So it just can get a little bit blurry here on, is everything equal? Like if you can bring any Libra into this relationship, are we equal partners? Is there a balance of power in this relationship? If there is not, then you need to address that. You can't just be the person that this person wants you to be because it fits nicely into like their fantasy. And if you like to be the person in their fantasy and that's the role you want to play, then that's great because you have it here. This Venus is on fire. There might be a lot of passion and attraction here. Um, but there's a lot of looking like this other person has a lot of power over the situation. And that can get murky because when someone has a lot of power, they have the advantage to abuse that power. So best bets in relationships, you want to find the equal ground so that everybody's coming in equals and no one's able to take advantage of the other person. And I'm looking here and I don't see any Libra going on in here. Oh, your Pluto's Libra, but there's nothing. I don't see a lot of interactions with your Pluto. So, um, so yeah, we just need to find where it's equal and make sure that we stay there. So if we want this relationship to be, a high expression of all of our potentials and this growth that could potentially happen, that is wonderful. And there's so many green flags here. I think the red flag so far is that Pluto moon conjunction and that not really red flag, yellow flag for the Pluto Venus square. It could be really intense. I mean, there's a lot of beautiful stories here where people take a Pluto person, especially like a male character, and then like the woman's like his Venus love of his life, and he's so devoted to her. He would do anything for her, and she's just like can do no wrong. And it's this beautiful romance. And that's great if that is, the happily ever after that can happen here. But what happens when you see the square is that sometimes that's not the way it goes. And so that's a yellow flag because it could be intense and wonderful, or it could be intense and not always what the Aquarius Venus person is looking for. Okay, let's see. Let's move on to this more positive. Okay, so I like to layer things here. So you have a quincunx, I always say that harshly, but to the Venus and Jupiter. And this is a positive note, strength again for this Venus, because so it's not it's not opposition. If you go across and you go over a little bit, there we go. The oh, excuse me, the other way. So we go over here to his, so his Virgo Jupiter and your Aquarius Venus. It gives a nice conversation here of who you are and where he's lucky. And you kind of just meet in a happy little space here of the mental energy and the just like this joy in each other. So Jupiter's kind of like luck, expansion, growth, joy, and optimism, adventure. It's a great benefic planet. So when it's involved in the relationship, I like to bring that up too, because that's kind of like Jupiter's a blessing. And it's just saying like there's a lot of joy here and fun and a lot of like you being the Venus person and him being the Jupiter person, like he shows you things that you didn't know before. He like expands your world a little bit. I don't know if he like it seems like there's like traveling of some sort between you two. Um, or he just has lived a good life and has done some cool things and you like to hear his stories. Like somehow he's making you feel like you're you're growing as a person being around him, and that makes you feel really good, and it makes you feel like you're lucky to know him, and that's a really fun aspect to have because it kind of helps with some of the other more intense ones. But it's like he brings you, like it's beneficial to you to be in a relationship with him in some way, and it's in the fourth house. And that makes me think of like family, like you see him like family, or he, um, you know, your families get along well, or you want to have a family with him, or he has a big house and he let you move in. It could be all of those things, but it's just something that has benefited you in some way, and it in it's in the house of family or real estate. And if that's part of the relationship, then it just makes you feel like you could like set roots with this person. Um, Quickly, I wanted to talk about each other's sons in each other's houses. So he's in your third house, and that is somebody that when their son is in your third house, it feels like you could be like with this person every day. Like it could be somebody that just becomes part of your daily routine. You find this person, you like communicating with them daily, and you want them to be in your lives. It's a nice it's a nice position to have someone else's son in that house. And for you, you're right on his IC. So if we were to flip this chart upside down, that would be right on the fourth house. And that just shows the roots with you too. So there's another common language here where you have something that he thinks that he could set roots with you. And you feel it too with his Jupiter being there for you. So it's interesting that um, I think those are two very good placements for sun signs, that you both feel like you're easy with him in your life every day, and he sees that you could be somebody that you know he could really build something with. Um, there's like a foundation there. So those are both really good positive strengths to play into that relationship. Um, for the sake of time, lastly, I wanted to talk about the Mars and the Venus. So the woman is the Venus. We spoke about your Venus Aquarius a lot here. So if we're looking at his Mars, um, then we would see kind of how he is in the attraction of the relationship and the general mood of things and movement. So for him, the Mars is in the 12th house in Gemini. And sometimes the 12th house can be a harder home for Mars. It can just be a situation that when he feels like he's not moving forward and what his desires aren't being addressed and fulfilled, it might be a little bit harder for him to make that clear in a way that doesn't seem like he's lashing out. So this is where we really want to work on the communication in the relationship. The Mars in this relationship square each other. So that's just another sign that two people have a hard time really peacefully handling conflict in the relationship. Mars and Mars go at each other like someone's going to be declared a winner, and it needs to be them. So we just want to be careful here, especially with his being in the 12th house. He can be someone in this relationship who can just have some outbursts or like passive aggressiveness, and it's something that can be irritating, but it can also just be really like hurtful to the relationship if someone's just kind of acting out immaturely. So we just need to make sure that there's ways that you two can communicate without it being like a battle, and no one needs to feel like they're not being heard. And again, I think um, for you having that Pisces energy, you're being a Pisces Mars. I feel like that's in the Mars doesn't love to be in Pisces, but I feel like it's a strength for you, and the fact that that is your fighting language, but it's also your sun sign, and it's something that I think you could lean into. The sensitivity you have. You might be able to read body language really well, or if you notice he's not saying what needs to be said, asking him and letting him know he's safe to say what's on his mind. He doesn't have to wait till it's really a problem. And for him, having a Gemini Mars, he has a lot of language. So if he is feeling really emotional because he has a lot of fire in himself, you're reminding him the best ways for him to get across might be through writing, writing you a letter about things. If he feels like he's going to get too emotional, if he speaks, he could write it, email, text. Those are all great ways for Gemini to get out what they need to in that Mars position without offending someone else. But being attracted wise, I think this really works. Your Venus is in Aquarius and his Mars is in Gemini. That's a huge strength here. You're both uh, very, you know, intellectual people in a way that like you're mentally active and you like to keep things fresh and exciting and you want to do things together and you enjoy the companionship of doing it together. So it's very natural for you to want see something fun to do and want to do it together. That's not a burden for you guys to leave the house and go do something. It's a positive, it's a strength. You can always find something that's happening and go do that together and find that you really like the way each other are when you're with other people or doing something fun and new. And the ability to connect with each other is always a strength. Um, it's always a spark for you too. So, what he does, how he handles himself in like his ambitions in life is appealing to you. Maybe he has many things that he's good at. A Gemini Mars sometimes has a lot of things he's good at. And maybe that's appealing to you. And the Aquarius Venus for you, it's attractive to him. He likes somebody who is a individual thinker and does what feels good to them. So that's a very good plus. I think I'll end it at that. I feel like I've been going on for a while. So let me know if you have questions, if there's something that you were hoping I was going to touch on and I did not. Um, or if you just have questions about what I spoke on, let me know. I'm happy to clarify. Oh, at this point, I will hand it over to you. And thank you so much for asking me to read this.